Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the channel where I try to review my favorite films for your enjoyment. And today, I'm finally continuing my review of the Pirates of the Caribbean series with movie 2 and 3, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. And oh boy, is this review a long time coming. And I honestly can't wait to not just continue talking about one of my all-time favorite film series, but also just be done with it and move on to other films. And also not have my reviews get overshadowed by my commentary videos, which are a lot of fun to make, so you should go and watch them. I even make an appearance in a couple of them, so yeah, go watch them. By the way, if you haven't seen my first pirate review, Curse of the Black Pearl, I recommend you go watch that before continuing this video, because the format in that video is going to be the same here, and I don't really want to repeat it here. The link to the first video will be in the description below, or in the top right icon if editor has figured it out yet. You are free to help too, you know. Yeah, I could, but you're smarter than I am, so I'll just be in your way. You have an excuse for just about everything, don't you? Yep. Whatever. Anyway, unlike the first review, the format is gonna be slightly different, since I'm reviewing 2 movies instead of 1. Why? Well, it's because the story in movie 2 continues on into movie 3, with very little time passing between them. And there's so much I want to talk about the films together that I thought it would be easier just to keep them together. Hence why it took me this long to get this video done. But don't worry, the other films are going to have their individual videos, and this double feature video won't happen ever again. Maybe. I hope. Okay, sorry for the long intro. Let's get into the actual review, shall we? The first film was being advertised, the producers, aka Disney, didn't know how successful the film was going to be, so the marketing team just called the film by the series title, Pirates of the Caribbean, up until the sequels were greenlit. Then they changed the title of the first film to Curse of the Black Pearl, similar to how the first Star Wars film was just called Star Wars until their sequels came out. This series' second film is called Dead Man's Chest, and it came out in 2006, while the third film, called At World's End, came out in 2007. Both films were rated PG-13 for the same reasons as the first film, except that the second film has cannibalism and the third has racism, which was a bit of a problem for China. Why specifically China? Well, the Chinese government doesn't like their citizens watching certain things, just like everywhere else in the world, but because this particular country brings in a lot of money, sometimes more than the United States, they like to make some, demands that prove to be a little, controversial. For example, President Xi, China's leader, was compared to Winnie the Pooh all the time, to the point that it became a meme, and the president and his supporters considered this joke as an attack on President Xi's character, and decided to ban Winnie the Pooh from their country. And this is basically editor's only reason as to why she doesn't want to visit China. Never underestimate my love for cuddly stuffed bears. So, what's China's issue with these 2 pirate films? Well, Dead Man's Chest was banned completely because the film contains cannibalism, gruesome violence, and floating spirits. So the Chinese government doesn't know how to have fun with the supernatural. Okay, fine, you do you, I guess. Fortunately, the third film was allowed to be shown in theaters, but it was heavily censored because of its racist depictions of Chinamen. You see, in older Hollywood films, Chinamen were usually depicted with bald heads, long beards and nails, and lots of scars. All of which one of the important characters has, so a lot of his screen time was cut out when it was shown in China to combat it, making the story very confusing for the audience overseas.
Welcome to Sing.
So, how well did the films do money-wise despite all this? Pretty well, not surprisingly. Dead Man's Chest had a budget of $225 million, while At World's End had a budget of $300 million. The box office returns for both films were $1 billion for Dead Man and $961 million for World's End. Take that, Chinese government! Even though you still win everywhere else. Anyway, ignoring those numbers for now, are the films really worth the watch? Despite the racist imagery, does the story still stand? Is the music and sword fighting still a bop? Well, let us find out as we set sail on another pirate adventure. This is Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End. Starting with the second film, Dead Man's Chest, The story is mainly about Captain Jack Sparrow, still played by Johnny Depp, trying to avoid paying back a debt to the world's most powerful pirate captain, Davy Jones, played by Bill Nye.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
No, not that Bill Nye. This Bill Nye.
Do you feel that dark abyss?
So, Jack is hellbent on doing whatever he can to get out of his debt and sail the ocean blue free once again. But doing so proved difficult when his magic compass started failing on him.
Jack Sparrow does not know what he wants. Or do you know? But I loath to claim it as your own.
At the same time, elsewhere, Elizabeth Swann and Will Turner, still by Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom respectively, are about to get married when Lord Cutler Bucket, played by Tom Hollander, shows up uninvited and arrests the two. Why? Well, it's because these two, along with James Norrington, played by Jack Davenport and was Elizabeth's first fiancé in the first film, helped a pirate escape the laws, so these three needed to be punished.
Perhaps you remember a certain pirate named Jack Sparrow.
Captain.
Beckett then promises Will that he will set him and the others free in exchange for the magic compass.
The item in question is considerably smaller and far more valuable. Something Sparrow keeps on his person at all times. A compass?
Will agrees to the promise and sets off to find Jack. But Elizabeth's father, Governor Swan, played by Jonathan Pryce, figured out that Beckett had no intention of upholding his end of the bargain and made an attempt to get his daughter out of the city.
Beckett has offered one pardon, only one, and that is promised to Jack Sparrow.
After learning this, Elizabeth escapes and convinces Beckett to hand over the one pardon he had over to her in exchange for her to get the compass. At least I think that's what happened. I don't know, the deal doesn't matter at all that much cause now she's free to go after Will.
Now this appears to be no more as we have a stowaway on board. A young woman, by the look of it. I want you to search the ship and find her.
After a few days of searching, Will finds the Black Pearl and its crew on an island inhabited by cannibal natives and helps them escape.
Time to go.
Now reunited, Jack immediately uses Will for his own benefit by tricking him into boarding Davy Jones's ship, the Flying Dutchman, to find a key to a chest they do not have.
You're not making any sense at all.
Unfortunately, Jones figures out what Jack was really trying to do with Will and raises Jack's debt and keeps the lover boy on his ship.
I keep the boy 99 souls.
But lucky for Will, his father Bootstraps Bill, played by Stellan Skarsgård, just so happened to be there as a member of the crew. So the two have a quick father-son bonding moment while Will finds more information about Jones and the Flying Dutchman.
The Dutchman needs a living heart, or there'll be no captain. And if there's no captain, there's no one to have the key.
While that was happening, Elizabeth finds Jack and crew at Tortuga, along with a very drunk James.
Who wants some? Form an orderly line, I'll have you all one by one. Come on, who's first?
Reunited once again, Jack uses Elizabeth, similar to how he used her fiancé, by lying to her that Will was kidnapped by Davy Jones, and finding the old captain's heart is the only way to save him.
Darling, I am truly unhappy to have to tell you this, but through an unfortunate and entirely unforeseeable series of circumstances that have nothing whatsoever to do with me, poor Will has been press-ganged into Davy Jones's crew.
She then believes him, and he gives her his compass.
Mr. Gibbs! Captain! We have our headache.
Finally!
Back on the Flying Dutchman, Will manages to trick Jones into revealing the location of his key in a game of liar's dice. But the game ends with Bootstrap losing so that Will can still escape.
Bootstrap Bill, you're a liar and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
Not wanting to give up, though, Will steals the key off Jones's neck, makes a promise to his father that he'll come back to save him, then disappears into the night.
I take this with a promise. I'll find a way to sever Jones's hold on you, and not rest until this blade pierces his heart.
He is then picked up by a merchant ship not far away, holding a dress Will recognizes.
The crew thought it was a spirit bringing some omen of ill fate.
That's foolish. Oh, yes. Exceedingly foolish.
But his freedom doesn't last very long, because Joan tracked Will down after discovering that his key is missing and tries to kill him with his pet kraken. But Will survives the attack and hides on the Flying Dutchman as it sails towards the island where Jones hid his heart.
The chest is no longer safe. Charter Costa y la Cruces.
And around that same time, Jack's crew lands at that specific island and digs up the chest with the, still beating heart inside.
It's real.
Editor, this is creepy. Meh, I've seen and heard worse. Moving on. Literally seconds later, Will meets them with the key, but before he can stab the heart, Jack tells him to back off and James joins the argument.
I can't let you do that either. So sorry.
I knew you'd warm up to me eventually.
One sword fight later, including Jones's crew and an old mill wheel, James ends up with the heart and he takes it back to Lord Beckett.
Do you have the compass?
Better.
Back with the main cast, Jack taunts the old captain, thinking he has the heart. But Jones responds to the taunt by sending his monstrous kraken to take down the Black Pearl, thinking that his crew brought back his heart.
Like a starboard! Send his beloved Pearl back to the depths!
A couple attempts to fight off the kraken later, the remaining crew decides it is best that they abandon ship and live another day to fight again.
Abandon ship. Into the longboat.
But Elizabeth figured out what Jack was actually doing, since she saw that Jack did try to escape earlier, but came back. She then decides to trick Jack into staying on the ship, assuming correctly that the Kraken is after him and not the crew.
It's after you, not the ship. It's not us.
The remaining crew then watch as their captain goes down with the ship, leaving the crew lost with no vessel or leader. And with nowhere else to go, the crew visits Tia Dalma, played by Naomi Harris, a friend of Jack's, who convinces them to go bring him back.
Would you sail to the ends of the earth and beyond to fetch back witty Jack and him precious pearl?
But of course, they can't go without a captain to lead them, and there is only one other person out there crazy enough to take on this deadly mission.
So tell me, what's become of my ship?
And that is the story of Dead Men's Chest. The plot can be a bit tricky to follow if you aren't paying attention, but it was still entertaining and the characters are still fun, including the new ones. Well, most of the new ones. So I can believe people who say they like this film over the first. Personally, I still like the first film a bit more, mostly because of the easier plot, I grew up with it, and the fights were a bit better? More on that later. So, let me know in the comments down below, which film do you like more? Curse of the Black Pearl or Dead Men's Chest? Cause, I already know nobody likes the third one. And speaking of the third film, let's talk about it. Long story short, everybody wants to kill Beckett. That's basically all the plot is, but everything connected to that plot is a bit, complicated? So bear with me as I try to summarize it all. Starting with everyone's motives, and the first half of the film. Elizabeth feels bad for killing Jack, so she follows Barbossa to Singapore, then to the end of the world to save him.
This is real, we're here.
While sailing through the afterlife, she found her father among the spirits who have passed on from the living world and is sailing towards the afterlife.
I'll give your love to your mother, shall I?
Will, on the other hand, only wants to rescue his father, but to do so, he needs a ship fast enough to catch the Flying Dutchman, and the only ship fast enough to do that is the Black Pearl.
We're the faster?
Against the wind, the Dutchman beats us. That's how she takes her prey. But with the wind,
We rob her advantage.
aye.
So Will follows Barbossa's orders at Singapore, makes a deal with Sao Fang, played by Chow Yun-fat, then declares a mutiny after returning to the land of the living, only for it all to backfire once Lord Beckett's crew got involved.
You agreed. The Black Pearl was to be mine.
And so it was.
As for Captain Barbossa, he needs Jack's 9 pieces of 8 to pay back his own debt to Tia Dalma for, well, bringing him back to life.
Do not forget it was by my power
your return from the dead, or what it mean if you feel me.
Then we have Tia Dalma, who is actually Calypso, who is just manipulating everyone into freeing her from her human form and get her powers back over the sea.
Did no one come to save me just because they missed me?
And that is basically the first half of the film. Confused yet? No? Good, because this is where things get really confusing. During the betrayal scene, yes, I'm gonna call it that, Barbossa makes a deal with Sao Fang that in exchange for an escape from Beckett's ship, he will give him Elizabeth, who Sao believes is Calypso because it can't possibly be the voodoo witch who is standing literally 4 feet to his left. But whatever. Sao accepts the deal, Elizabeth plays along, and the two groups go their separate ways. At the same time, literally, Jack makes a deal with Beckett, promising him to bring the pirate lords to him in exchange for his freedom. At least I think that's the deal. I don't know. I keep zoning out during this part. You know, you shouldn't be doing that to films you intend to criticize. Yeah, well, when a scene gets boring and hard to follow, I just can't help but think about something else. Also, the dialogue between Jack and Beckett just keeps getting interrupted by Barbossa and Sal, and vice versa, and it just makes it even harder to follow. Yeah, I see your point. Also, do you need a break? No, I can keep going. Alright, just don't push yourself too hard, okay? Will you take over if I do? Yeah, I thought so. Back to the film. As the two ships escape, Beckett goes after the Pearl while Davy Jones goes after Sal. Unfortunately, Beckett's ship couldn't keep up because of Jack's amazing exit from a few seconds ago.
Do you think he plans it all out? Or just makes it up as he goes along?
On Sal's ship, Elizabeth continues pretending to be Calypso to get more information out of Sal. But right when things start to get into #MeToo territory, the Flying Dutchman attacks and takes over the ship, killing Sao in the process. While Sao dies, he hands over his 9 pieces of 8 to Elizabeth and declares her his successor.
What did he tell you?
He made me captain.
Once the ship has been taken over, Captain Elizabeth and her crew meet Davy Jones and her ex-fiancé, James Norrington, with the latter being more than happy to see her.
Your father will be overjoyed to know you're safe.
My father's dead.
No, it can't be true. He returned to England.
Did Lord Beckett tell you that?
But their capture was short-lived, as Captain Elizabeth and her crew escaped with James's help, whose actions were also short-lived.
James Norrington, do you fear death? I take that as a no.
And after all that, the meeting of the Brethren Court finally takes place, with everyone that matters accounted for.
Who is this betrayer?
Not likely anyone among us.
Where's Will?
Not among us.
During the meeting, 2 ideas were presented to the other captains. Plan number 1, presented by Captain Barbossa. Use the 9 pieces of 8 to release Calypso and use her powers to take down Jones and Beckett. Plan number 2, presented by Elizabeth.
We fight.
Long meeting short, the other lords fight over the ideas. Jack's father enters and establishes a rule that only the Pirate King can declare war. The vote for Pirate King takes place. Everyone voted for themselves except for Jack, who voted for Elizabeth. Elizabeth becomes Pirate King, war is declared, and everyone left to their ships.
And so, we shall go to war.
Around the same time, Will was picked up by Lord Beckett, and the two were having tea when Davy Jones decided to storm in and drop some last-minute exposition.
I showed them how to bind her. She could not be trusted. She gave me no choice. We must act before they release her.
After that, the two sides gathered together at the middle of Nowhere Sea, called a temporary truce. Will and Jack trade places, and Beckett threatens Elizabeth to not go through with her war.
Advise your brethren. You can fight and all of you will die, or you can not fight, in which case only most of you will die.
Not sure what to do, Barbossa takes charge and goes through with his plan. Perform a ritual to release Calypso and use her powers to take down Beckett's army. But the ritual ends with a giant Calypso screaming something in French before dissolving into a boat full of crabs.
Nothing. Our final hope has failed us.
But not all was lost. Thanks to the exposition dump earlier, Will was able to tell Calypso who trapped her in human form to begin with, and after her release, Calypso created the strong winds and whirlpool for the two armies, basically creating the perfect battlefield for an epic fight between the Black Pearl and the Flying Dutchman. So cool! I know most of this fight is in CGI and not real ships like in the first film, but this is still so cool! Ah! Anyway, the fight ends with Will getting stabbed by Jones, who is immediately attacked by Bootstraps because of that stab, giving Jack enough time to help Will stab Jones's heart, killing the old captain and making Will the new captain of the Flying Dutchman. Yes, that was proper English, don't fight me. The two ships then leave the whirlpool together and completely destroy Beckett's warship, ending the war and killing the series' worst villain.
It's just good business.
The film ends with Will giving Elizabeth his heart before disappearing into the sunset, Barbossa stealing the Black Pearl again, and Jack setting sail in his small boat for his next adventure.
Drink up, me hearty Joe.
And that is the summary of At World's End. Confusing and dramatic, but still has its fun moments and great acting from everyone. All in all, a decent film, still fun for the whole family. And with that, let's talk about the individual scenes, starting with Dead Man's Chest. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that scene because everyone and their mother has a problem with it, and I don't blame them. During the first attack, the sea monster was able to take down a whole ship in less than a second. But then with every attack after that, it gets slower and slower. Why is that? Well, the reason might be because the director, Gore Verbinski, or someone in charge, wanted to keep the look of the Kraken a secret during the first attack, similar to how other monster films will keep their monsters in the dark until near the end so that their audience will grow fear and hype for the thing until it's finally revealed. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and unfortunately for this film, the payoff kinda worked, but it sacrificed a lot story-wise because of that slow reveal. But that's just my assumption for the behind-the-scenes stuff. But if I were to come up with an excuse for the story, well, I think I would theorize that the speed of the attack is determined how hungry the Kraken is. Or it might be because when Davy Jones summons the Kraken, it is trained to take its time on the ships Jones once destroyed, but is quick during the normal hunt. So that first ship was just part of the normal hunt, while the other two attacks were from Jones's summons, and it just so happened that Jack's hat was on that first ship? Maybe, I don't know. That could be it, that might not be it. Hey, I mean, do what you want with that theory. And with that dealt with, let's move on to the next scene. Okay, this is arguably the best scene in this whole film. The epic sword fighting, good comedic moments, and CGI monsters attacking everyone. Just like how the last sword fight in the first film went. But between the two fights, I think I like the one in the first film a whole lot more. One reason I like the first film fight more is because of the use of the CGI. Seeing Jack Barbossa and the Cursed Black Pearl crew use the curse to their advantage, and seeing them jump in and out of the moonlight is far more entertaining than seeing fully CGI things walking about. Yeah, we get the funny joke of the guy losing his head and his body walking away, but that's as far as entertaining with those CGI things get. I don't know, I find it a lot cooler seeing the curse in the first film. I don't know, that's just me. My second and possibly real reason why I like the fight in the first film more is because it felt more like a real sword fight rather than a simple stage fight. In the first film, the camera work showed the fight like a real sword fight between skilled fighters, and the editing helped show who the characters are and how they express that through their fights. While in the second film, the camera was pushed back to see more of the fight than we really need to, and the editing showing little to no character. Well, other than Elizabeth awkwardly standing there shouting at the men for being, well, men.
Oh, fine! Let's just pull out our swords and start banging away at each other. That will solve everything! I've had it with wobbly-legged, rum-soaked pirates!
So, yeah, I like the sword fights in the first film a lot better than the second film. But don't get me wrong, the fights in the second film are still fun, but it could have been better. Oh well. Next scene!
So tell me, what's become of my ship?
Out of this whole film, this scene in particular is my absolute favorite. And yeah, part of that is because Barbossa is my favorite character, but what makes this scene even better though, is that if you were paying attention earlier in the film, you could have been able to predict it. Remember this scene? For those who don't recognize those boots, those belong to Barbossa, who we see later walking around like he never died in the first film. Then again, this series is known for its ability to set things up perfectly for a satisfying payoff. It just so happened that my favorite out of the Chekhov's gun moments in this series is this scene. Oh yeah, and there's this other scene too.
Look what I got. I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar of dirt. And guess what's inside it?
And that's all I wanted to talk about in Dead Man's Chest. Now on to the third film. And right off the bat, we start with the opening scene of the film, and oh boy, do I have issues with this one. The first thing I don't like about this scene is how it's used to set up how evil Lord Beckett is. Beckett has successfully taken the rights of the citizens of Port Royal away as they walk towards the gallows.
Right to assembly. Suspended. Right to habeas corpus. Suspended. Right to legal counsel. Suspended.
And after every round of death, the soldiers then strip everything off the dead bodies and pile them off to the side like they're recreating the Holocaust. Cause you can't get more evil than Hitler, apparently. Like I mentioned earlier, the big point of this scene is to show that Beckett is a bad guy. Like we couldn't tell from the last film, but the scene here does it in a way that just makes Beckett a boring villain. Here's what I mean. Barbossa is fun because of his good lines, control over others, and his unforgiving ruthlessness. Just listen to how he talks to Elizabeth after she makes a mistake with her negotiation.
Your return to shore was not part of our negotiations nor our agreement, so I must do nothing. And secondly, you must be a pirate for the Pirate's Code to apply, and you're not. And thirdly, the code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
Davy Jones is cool because of his powers, his appearance, and how he mocks people. Just look at the way he talks to the scared dying crew in his first scene.
Life is cruel. Why should the afterlife be any different?
Come to think of it, what was Beckett's first scene? How did he present himself? How did he talk to those around him?
The warrant for the arrest of one William Turner.
This warrant is for Elizabeth Swan.
Oh, is it? That's annoying. My mistake. Arrest her.
But what charges?
No!
Aha! Here's the one for William Turner.
Yeah, Beckett just sounds like another businessman bad guy who pretends to be in control of everything by killing off everyone he doesn't like or can't use. And the way he acts in At World's End reminds me more of a spoiled brat than an evil manipulator.
I personally find it distasteful to even contemplate the horror facing all those on board.
No offense to Tom Hollander, by the way. I still think he's a great actor. It's just, he's playing a not good character. My point is, when you show your villain character for the first time in a film, please be aware of what they are doing so that you leave an impression you want on your audience. Now, my second problem with this scene is the singing. Although good, and is technically another Chekhov's gun moment, I don't think it was needed. The point of the executed people singing is supposed to be the call to the pirate lords that the people are in trouble and they need to get together and save everyone.
The psalm has been sung. The time is upon us. We must convene the Brethren Court.
But why? Everyone already knows that Becca is a problem. Why not just have the pirate lords say, hey, we need to have a meeting because this wannabe destroyer of the world is making both pirating and business near impossible. Heck, how about this? Change the opening scene with shots of the Flying Dutchman taking down ship after ship after ship, and end it with a shot of Bucket watching happily from a distance. Then have the dialogue between Barbossa and Sao Feng be changed to this.
Hey, Sao Feng. Yes? Have you heard of Lord Cutler Beckett? I have. He has been destroying many of my ships. Business is down because of him. I have an idea. Let's gather the other pirate lords and discuss a plan of action to take him and the Flying Dutchman down. Sounds like a good idea. But that also means we need Jack, so can we borrow that map we tried to steal from you earlier to rescue him? No. I figured you'd say that.
Anyway, that opening scene wasn't necessary and it didn't really do the story or characters any favors, other than giving the audience a fun song to sing to after leaving the theaters. Next scene.
Nice sword.
Okay, this is another one of those Chekhov's guns moments. I know, but hear me out. These two films like to make a lot of references to the first film, because, well, it was the first film, so why not? But my absolute favorite reference to the first film in this film is Will's sword. We see it introduced as a ceremonial sword to James, made by Will.
The tang is nearly the full width of the blade.
Impressive. Very impressive.
But then it disappeared in the second film, and the reason was given to us by Elizabeth's father.
Commodore Norrington resigned his commission some months ago.
But then the sword reappears in the third film, being given back to James Beckett.
Something for you there. Your new station deserves an old friend.
Then James uses the sword to stab Davy Jones in response to his recruitment speech, and then later Jones used that sword to kill Will, the person who made the sword. Talk about irony. Wait, are swords made of iron? Focus on the review, Kishti. Yes, sorry, got it. Next scene.
Master Rigetti, if you will.
I kept it safe for you, just like you said when you gave it to me.
I have, but now I need it back.
This scene confused me a lot. Correction, it still confuses me a lot. From what we know from the first film, Barbossa didn't become captain until he took over Jack's ship, and we saw through Elizabeth how someone becomes both captain and pirate lord. So, who gave Barbossa a 9 pieces of 8? What happened to his original crew and ship? And why was he so hell-bent on getting Jack's Black Pearl instead of getting a ship that isn't owned by someone else? Well, all those questions really don't matter too much for this particular story, but the biggest problem I have with Barbossa's non-existent backstory is that his piece is a wooden eyeball that he has someone else hold for him, who has proven multiple times that he isn't very responsible with it.
It's got me eye! You won't give it back!
Just why, Barbossa? Were you planning on making him a pirate lord after you die or something? What would have happened if your piece were to go missing because of this guy? Would you kill him? Would you no longer be a pirate lord anymore? Why didn't the writers do a better job at writing so that I don't have all these questions? Ah! Point is, this scene opens up all kinds of plot holes and what-if scenarios to the point that I personally find that far more distracting than the Kraken attacks in the previous film. Too much is not explained, and what we know doesn't match up with what we see on the screen. And I can't come up with any excuses for the story like I can with the Kraken attacks, so I have no choice but to move on and pretend that these plot holes don't exist just for the sake of my sanity. Please, someone let me know if I'm missing something. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Anyway, moving on to the next scene. Okay, throughout the entirety of the first film and in the second film, both Elizabeth and Will keep telling everyone they know that Jack is a good person, which people find hard to believe because of all the bad things he has done. See example of his crimes here.
Impersonating a cleric of the Church of England. Sailing under false colors. Arson. kidnapping, looting, poaching, brigandage, pilfering.
But when you really think about it and watch Jack more closely, you start to notice that he has done a lot of good things for others. For personal gain, of course, but still good nonetheless. For example, he saved Elizabeth from drowning even though it got him arrested, not shooting Will even though it costed him his escape. He came back to his sinking ship to save everyone, which resulted in his death. Then we have this scene.
People aren't cargo, mate.
Yeah, I know this is a deleted scene, but I like the dialogue here better than what we got in the final version. This scene makes Beckett more interesting and explains how he and Jack knew each other. Also, after this scene was released to the public, someone online created a theory that Jack's backstory was that Jack used to work for Beckett, but something happened.
I contracted you to deliver cargo on my behalf. You chose to liberate it.
Jack went against the company, so Beckett branded him a pirate and destroyed his ship.
The last I saw of that ship, she was on fire. A blackened hulk sinking beneath the waves.
Which later to the deal Jack made with Jones, then we get the events of the first film, and now we're here. So, Jack is indeed selfish and manipulates those around him for his own gain, but he still values others and sees them as they are. People. Which is probably the real reason why he didn't want to pay back his debt to Jones. Sacrificing others that way is against his moral code.
People aren't cargo, mate.
Then we come back to this scene where Jack hesitates stabbing Jones's heart because he knows once he does, he loses his freedom and is forced to do Jones's job of guiding the dead to the afterlife. Granted, he could have saved Will easily if he had just stabbed the thing before Jones killed Will, but we saw through both films that Jack doesn't want to be bound to the Flying Dutchman, and there's no way he can convince anyone else to do it for him, especially while Jones is staring down at him.
Jack Sparrow does not know what he wants. Or do you know? But alloweth to claim it as your own.
But after Will is stabbed and dying, Jack takes that moment to both save Will and himself without becoming captain of the Flying Dutchman. Yeah, it's still a selfish thing to do, but it really is the best option for everyone at that moment, while also proving to everyone that Jack is indeed a good person.
You're welcome.
And that is all I wanted to say about the third film. So, what did I think about these two films as a whole? Well, they could be better. The acting and sets are still just as good as the first film, but the complicated story and the boring villain made the films a bit difficult to get through. Also, trying to understand everything in one or two viewings is almost impossible. But ignoring all of that, the films are still pretty good. The music is still fantastic, the fights are still fun, and if you wanted to stop watching this series here, you can and still be satisfied.
Drink up me hearty Joe.
As for the other two films, well, a small spoiler warning, I guess, but they can easily be skipped as they don't do much character-wise for anybody, and a majority of the cast doesn't even come back, so what's the point? Other than making review videos out of them, which is something I will do, so I'll see you all next time with my review on movie number 4 on Stranger Tides. Good night!